Everyone. So since morning, we have been listening to the great talks. And also we are just listening about how language technology traveled for years and how the technology also traveled along with the research. We know that language technology initially is mostly a knowledge-driven approach, right? So a lot of rules and cumbersome rule writing, rewriting, reordering, all these things happen. And slowly NLP become a data-hungry field. Lot of data. We keep having too much of data, trying to make sure that our approach is based on data. So we have been shifted from knowledge-driven approach to data-driven approaches. So as we also heard from the morning, LTRC has put a lot of efforts in building, using Indian grammatical tradition in the language technology research. So what will happen to all the Indian grammatical tradition research that happened all through the years? Is this knowledge-driven approach, is it useful even today, or is it has any validity? Can we compete with this knowledge-driven approach with the data-driven approach? Of course, we know that data-driven approaches are easier to do than the knowledge-driven approach, thinking that of course, writing rules and all these things. So now we have Dr. Soma and Dr. Sukhada here to discuss about the state of the art on these knowledge-driven approaches and how these knowledge-driven approaches can also make impact on the language research, and how this kind of knowledge-driven approaches are mostly helpful for building technologies, and using these technologies, can we bring some kind of changes to the research in languages? So to introduce Dr. Somapal, is been involved with LTRC for more than 2 decades, I guess. She has been actively working on synergizing this Indian grammatical tradition with technology. And she's also actively working on universal semantic grammar. And she is making sure that this knowledge is being taken towards school children to make use of this tradition to teach the language. It's a kind of paradigm shift she's trying to introduce. And we have Dr. Sukhada as also our alumni, done her PhD from IIIT Hyderabad, now working at IIIT-BHU, Varanasi. So I welcome both of you to give your talk on universal semantic grammar and its relevance today.
Since we will be presenting jointly, so ऐसे बीच-बीच में we will say, talk to each other ourselves. That's part of the talk. So, as you see that we have been listening since morning, Akshar Bharti, and so my task is easy because it has been already introduced, and it is a legacy that we would be presenting today. And today's presentation is not about our scholarship. It's not about what we are doing. It's all about our gratitude. So this talk is only offering our gratitude to the work that has been happening for last 30 years and has come to us. अच्छा, ये तो मुझे ही करना पड़ेगा. So, as you are seeing in the center, you have seen Chaitanya ji and Dr. Sangal. They are here. And you also see the other third person who you have been hearing, Professor Ramakrishna Macharya ji. So these three are the center point. And then around that, for last 30 years, You can see Ambaji, Deeptiji, Professor Mameshwar Rao, Tripathi ji from Sanskrit Central University, Professor Warkheri. Some of these names you have been hearing from the morning. And they are all part of this group, part of this activity for last many, many years. And now, since the journey continues, more young people are joining, and now you can see the larger constellation where we are there, and along with us, whoever are working are there. So we are one team, and this is Akshar Bharti. Okay. So what is universal semantic grammar? I have tried to give a small definition, a set of semantic principles independent of language. And I have given a picture in the brain, inside the brain, as you can see. So this set of principles are there inside us. So what are these principles? Very quickly, if I say, since it is independent of language, since this is universal, they would be very simple. So what we can think of, concepts and their ontology, relation between these concepts, relation between larger proposition, which we generally call sentence, so the connection between the sentences, and finally, a set of handlers for focusing, foregrounding, backgrounding, and so on. So these four, I could think of these four broad things which we all share. As human beings, we all share. So it is there within us. And I would say the last one, that is a set of handlers for focusing, foregrounding, backgrounding. This is very, very particular to our tradition, to Indian grammatical tradition. Somebody in the morning was telling that, yes, I have also been trained as a Western linguist, but I have done semantics, formal semantics in my education. So meaning is something I have always been working with. But yes, in Western tradition, we have a tendency of looking things in bits and pieces, fragmented, right? And that helps you to study a particular region. It's not, I would not say that has happened because of some utilitarian need. But Indian grammatical tradition has always seen things whole. So I remember sometimes when I was a student, somebody told me, like, if you want to understand discourse, Bhartrihari has talked about it. So I said, okay, I can't read Sanskrit. So I bought 2 volumes of Bhartrihari in Bangla, Vakyapadyam. I bought and I came back home and I started reading. I'm reading. There's no question of sentence. There is no question of discourse. Rather, the question is, what is the purpose of life? They have been talking about what is the purpose of life, pages after pages. And I thought, because I have by then read many linguistics books, I know what is a pointed reading, pointed understanding. So that was my first introduction to, how traditionally Indians have looked any subject matter. After that, I have understood Ayurveda. I know people who does Ayurveda and all those things. And I see, as an Indian, our question is always whole. So my training in the university and my getting introduced to Indian grammatical tradition, there's a huge jerk. There's a huge shock. But then I started appreciating it. And that's why when I see, and that has helped a lot when I work with Sukhada, because Sukhada is coming from a very traditional background, and I am coming from a Western linguistics background. So when we, collaborate, so I think a lot of, beautiful things come up. So this is capturing speaker's intention, which in our tradition is called vivaksha. So this set of handlers for focusing, backgrounding, foregrounding, and so on. This is nothing but what is the intention of the speaker? What does speaker wants to say? I will give you a very simple example to make my points clear. For example, eat. Say the action eating. So when you say that you know the meaning of eating, that means you know that there would be an eater, there would be something to be eaten, some time when you eat, some place where you eat, maybe also an instrument that you use to eat. So these are, when you know all this, you know the meaning of eating, right? Now, when I say, मैंने चावल खाया, I ate rice, और मुझको चावल खाना पड़ा, I had to eat rice. In both, the action is same, khana, eating. But, and so, who is eaten, what is eaten will remain same. But then what is the difference between these two sentences? Why are these two different sentences? So that is, you are going beyond the argument structure is the technical term we use. That is, the verb has certain akanksha in Indian grammatical tradition term. It has certain akanksha. It requires certain participants. But that's not all that the speaker expresses. So if you look at any state-of-the-art semantic representation, they mainly talk about akanksha. Like this verb takes these things, and so the representation is representing that. But Indian grammatical tradition, the center is vivaksha. So what is the intention of the speaker? Now, as some universal principles, all these facilities are available to you, inside you. जिसको हम बोलते हैं semantic grammar. Now, which one the speaker will choose in which context depends on the speaker. And that is what is called speaker's intention, the center of Indian grammatical tradition, as we have understood it. Sukhada, correct? So I tried to show all these principles inside you. So that is the semantic structure that the speaker here, the language person has. Now we come to, since morning we have been hearing about communication. Language is all for communication. So there is a reality. And there is those principles within the speaker or hearer's mind, the semantic structure. Now, reality, one example. So this is one situation. In this regard, Bhartrihari has said something, how we understand meaning. We quickly introduce it because that will help us to understand semantic grammar better.
Yeah, so Bhartrihari says is that the process of conveying an idea to the listener or to the reader has 3 stages. So, and he talks about it through the analogy of a painter. So, for example, when a painter wants to paint a picture, the painter has the complete idea, complete picture in his or her mind, and then the next stage comes that this painter visualizes the whole picture in parts separately. So, for example, if the painter is willing to paint a figure, so he will look at the different parts of the figure or an object. So he will look at the different parts of that particular object separately and individually. And then the third stage comes where the painter paints them separately, individually, part by part. And that is the whole process that takes place in communicating the idea to the readers or to the speakers.
So this is what then happens. That is, there you have reality, you have a semantic structure within you of that reality, and then if you are a speaker, you express it using certain medium of expression. In this case, we are talking about language, so it is language. It can be painting also. So laws of USG. So you have a real world, then that leads to, from the speaker's point of view, some semantic structure that we have within, and then that get expressed in context. So language in use. So what important point that we have understood through this is, generally we feel there is reality and there is language. So the connection between reality and language. We are saying no. In the middle, you are there. In the middle, the language user is there. And language user is not just seeing and speaking, seeing and speaking. In that case, everybody is seeing the same thing, then everybody will say the same thing. That doesn't happen, right? Even today now, if we ask each one of us to describe this room, we will do it very differently. Why? Because the structure, all the principles are available to you. What you are referring to, what you are accessing, depends on what you want to focus on as a speaker. That is speaker's vivaksha, speaker's intention. So, and at this point, I give one small story. It's not story, it's a fact. So this is universal semantic grammar, and with this, we have been working with many schools. So we go to the schools and we ask the teachers before, we start the workshop, tell us what are the challenges. Now, we are all researchers sitting in the lab and work. Life outside is very different. So we want to understand first the life outside. So we ask, the teacher says, theek hai, everything is fine. Then we a little bit probe, bachche likhte to hai, writing is an issue. Okay, writing is an issue. What kind of issue? They don't write properly. Then we ask, okay, then maybe they don't know the words. Vocabulary is missing. No. They know all the words. Vocabulary is not a problem. Acha, then, they can write one sentence answer, okay. But as soon as it comes through 2, 3, 4 sentences, they fail. So if the question answer becomes a little big, they fail. What's happening? They have the vocabulary. They sort of know the content. Then we further probe with the teachers, we think together, and what we realized is, what is missing is the organization of the thought inside. So if your organization of thought is not proper, then what you pronounce, what you say, what would be your content? So from the morning, I have been listening to this, that communication, goal of language is communication, function of language is communication. We have also been taught that. But my question always comes back when I work with children, content. If the content is not there, if the organization of the content is not there within the child, then what will the child utter? So, this organization of thought is very important. And in language, you call it coherence. So, when you are writing a text or saying a few sentences, whether there is connection between the sentences properly organized so that it becomes coherent. So that becomes very important. So I'll come back to this again. So what we understood that universal semantic grammar has 2 goals. One, making knowledge explicit, and second, a semantic representation capturing both ontological and argument structure of predicates and speaker's intention. So, semantic representation in this case is modeled on the basis of universal semantic grammar. So, what we have done is we have designed universal semantic representation, which is computationally tractable, based on the principle of universal semantic grammar, where we are trying to capture both the ontological and argument structure of the predicates as well as speaker's intention. And there is a continuum in representation. that brings the continuum in representation. So in the morning, we have been talking about this. Things are getting discrete. Now, discrete things will not communicate the whole. So, then what would be the nature of the representation? So, I will show you. And we are applying this representation for natural language processing as well as for education. So this is one, universal semantic representation modeling the universal semantic grammar. So as you see, I hope you can see this. So you see the different arrows, colors are different. So that says that these are different kind of information. And this is a template. So this template is there inside you as a structure. You can fill up this structure to make sentences and then sentence after sentence discourse. So for example, this is the final, like if you fill the template. So as you see, Parai Karna ya study is your root. And then there is Ram, who is Karta. And then there is a span of reading, and that is Subha and Sham. The span starts from Subha and spans end in Sham. And it is an affirmative proposition. And then there is a karya karan, cause of this action. Cause of this action, as you can see, is complex because there is an and. So there are two causes. And those two causes again are sentence 2 and sentence 3. So this is getting built inside you. This is getting built inside you. And what you generate is, राम ने सुबह से शाम तक पढ़ाई की क्योंकि कल परीक्षा है और इसमें वो सफलता चाहता है. Ram studied from morning till evening because the exam is tomorrow and he wants to succeed in it. Both the sentence can be generated from this structure. And that makes it semantic structure and that makes it universal. So what we are saying, universal semantic representation is language independent. You can generate multiple languages from this representation. This is a very new work that following the same, continuum, the idea and notion of continuum, we have tried to give a discourse plan for geography chapters. So we are studying, NCERT book, chapter by chapter. And when we are doing it, we are seeing that a structure is emerging out of the author's writing. And that is also very interesting. So maybe it can be. So this is a reading aid with discourse plan. So when I was a student and when I was talking to my students also, then, when you open a chapter to read, it's not that from the very beginning you start reading each line with similar attention, similar interest. That's not possible. What you try to do is, you try to mota you understand. What mota this chapter is trying to say, right? And then you go inside and try to understand. So all these chunks, the blue colors are the sentence chunks. So this, if I can give children this kind of, a graph where I give a mota structure of the whole chapter. So we have noticed that every chapter starts with these things, like every chapter will have a title and then it will have introduction, and introduction will have 3 parts. I cannot read. Background, what to study, and purpose. Every chapter starts like that. Background for this chapter, what to study, and what is the purpose. Then it goes inside and explain. So if I can develop this kind of, structure, discourse plan for the children to access, then we are thinking like that would be interesting. So a child gets a bird's eye view of the whole chapter. So this is what we are doing in the domain of natural language processing. But as I told you, universal semantic grammar has a very larger goal, which is in the domain of education. And we are saying that in the domain of education, the goal is, the vision is learn to think and develop critical thinking. And the milestone is reading with comprehension. So when I was talking to these teachers, I was asking them that you are saying like even a children of, these are all government schools of Delhi. Huh? I have been discussing with these teachers. And I asked them, when you are saying that many of them cannot even read, then how are they passing? Then they told me, how do you teach? They told me, we all read together in the class, like, आप 2 लाइन पढ़िए, आप 2 लाइन पढ़िए, आप 2 लाइन पढ़िए, सारे बच्चे ने पढ़ लिया. Then the teacher gives a summary of the chapter. And she said, in their easy language. So in their easy language, the teacher gives a summary of the chapter, and then the teacher gives a set of question answer. तो बच्चे वो question answer रट लेता है, and then they write the exam and they pass. So the child never feel the need to read and understand a chapter. जरूरत ही नहीं पड़ता है. And then when these child come to us and we ask them, you read a paper, why are you not being able to read the paper? Why are you not an independent researcher? How will they be an independent researcher? पढ़ा ही नहीं कभी. Never ever they have read a book and tried to understand themselves. And I'm talking about mass. Now don't please talk about your child, because your child can be an exception. I'm talking about mass. Okay? Yes, time is up. So reading with comprehension is our goal. I think we are done. So these are the 2 collaborators right now in the domain of education. So we thought, like, if we want to start, we have to start very early. So very recently, this Heartfulness International School at Kanha, this Kanha has a very big setup. Their international school has tied up with us to develop their Sanskrit curriculum. And this Sanskrit curriculum would be connected to universal semantic grammar when the child reaches the age of 12. So 3 to 18 years curriculum we are developing, where we are studying, because our backbone is Indian grammatical tradition, right? And Indian grammatical tradition, you will understand the best when it is written, when you can read the original. So we are starting from Sanskrit. We are taking them with us. So this is a very recent collaboration, and we are very happy about it. And also we are collaborating with DIIT. DIIT is District Education and Training Center, and that is there in every district, it seems. We have collaborated with Delhi Ghuman Ghera DIIT Center, and their teacher trainee are working with us. They are developing lesson plans with us to go and teach in the schools, in following the method of universal semantic grammar. So these are our activity, and these are our offering to Akshar Bharti. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Soma and Professor Sukhada, for your talk. I request Professor Deepti to please present the speakers with a memento.